Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Good morning, everyone. Can you give me a big wave if you can hear me? Awesome. Excellent. I'm so glad that you are here today. And I'm so glad that you are joining us today for our poetry workshop with Adrienne Gear. How many of you have read poetry before? Some of you have read poems before. That is great. And how many of you have written a poem? Give me a thumbs up if you have ever in your whole entire life written a poem. Awesome. So many of you have. Well, today we are going to spend some time reading poetry and learning about what poetry is. And we're also going to spend some time writing poetry. So this is what our day is going to look like here. We're going to start with the welcome. That's what I'm doing right now. And then we'll have our first lesson on poetry. And then we'll take a brain break where we get up and we move our bodies a little bit so that we are ready to write. And we are going to learn about writing gratitude poems. And then we'll wrap up. And you'll see down here, there's bonus Earth Day poems. We are going to do this lesson, and then we're going to send you off to write your gratitude poems. And we are going to keep going in the meeting here with another lesson on writing Earth Day poems. So at any point, if you need to head out, you can head over to the live stream or the recording and go from there. So I need to go back to the very beginning and welcome you here again. So welcome today. My name is Haley, and I am the community engagement lead at Simbi. So this event is presented by Simbi. Simbi is a really cool reading platform where you can read and you can listen to kids all around the world reading and recording and narrating stories and poems. So there's tons of poems on there too. So this event is brought to us today by Simbi. But we are so excited that we have Adrienne Gear here to share with us. Before we get started, I am going to give you a few housekeeping things to help make this event super fun and great. If you haven't already, teachers had a chance to download the resource package. You can find it in the link in the chat or in your reminder emails. And it has some really helpful pages to use today. But if you don't have that already printed, friends, if you have a pencil and a piece of paper, you will be all set as well. All right, so you will have some time today to write, and you'll have some time to listen as well. So the resource package, and then the other thing I said, remember I said that this event is in 3 parts, and it's hard for friends to sit and listen to a virtual event for a really long time. So if at any point you are feeling like your group is getting too wiggly or we are going too fast, if you are on the live stream, you can pause and unpause as you need. Or if you're in the Zoom meeting, you can actually head over to the live stream and continue from there. So it is okay to use this event in 3 separate parts or as many parts as you need, because there are so many of us here today. It is impossible for us to go at the speed that everyone needs to go. So if at any point you need to go to the live stream, you can do that. Now, there's a few times during our time today where Adrienne is going to ask questions. So you can call out your answers and maybe we'll be able to hear you through the world, or you can get your grown-ups to write their answers in the chat, and then I will share them with them. So make sure if you're writing answers in the chat that they come directly to me, and then I will share them with Adrienne. All right. So I think that is all the things that you need to know. Our agenda now says it is time to pass it over to Adrienne, who is going to teach us all about what is poetry. So Adrienne, you can take it away.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to say I'm so excited to be doing this lesson with you. I love poetry and I love working with teachers and working with all of you. So thank you so much for joining me this morning. I wanted to do a quick land acknowledgement. This morning, I am coming to you from the beautiful unceded territory of the Silks Okanagan peoples, where I am currently residing in Kelowna, British Columbia. And I am grateful to live, work, play, and learn in this beautiful part of BC. So welcome, welcome, welcome to the poetry workshop. My name is Adrienne Gear. I am a teacher. I am also an author. So I write books, but I don't write the books that you would maybe find in your library that you would be taking out. I write books for teachers. So your teachers may have one or two or a few of my books in their classroom. My most recent book that I just finished is all about poetry. So I'm very excited to be able to share just a few ideas from this new poetry book. Now, in case you didn't know, April this month is National Poetry Month. So people across Canada are celebrating poetry together. So that's why we're putting this event on in April so that you can join in that celebration. So I'm very, very happy to welcome you. Before we start to do our poetry writing, I wanted to spend just a few minutes talking to you about what poetry is. I know that Haley asked some of you, have you read poems before and have you written poems before? But I just want to spend just a few minutes talking to you about what poetry is. So here's our question. What is poetry? So in your teacher's handout, they had a little chart that had 4 squares in it. So if your teacher has this or wants to do a T-square on the board and follow along with me, you can do a little eyeball and an ear and a heart and a brain. We're going to be working through 4 big questions about poetry. And the first question is, what does poetry look like? So I'm going to show you a picture here of a page from a book and a page from a poetry book. So one page is from a story and the other is from a poetry book. So what are you noticing that's different between what the story looks like and what the poem looks like? I'm going to pause for a few seconds. You can talk with your teacher about what you're noticing. If your teacher wants to put a couple of comments in the chat, and then we will talk about what you noticed. So just a few seconds to talk about that. So Haley, if anyone has made a comment, that would be great.
All right, so I'm going to read off some of them as they come in. So there's fewer words. Poetry is shorter. The words are in the middle. What else? No sentences, shorter. Poetry doesn't have as many words. There's a title, less writing, more white space. There's margins, less words. I think we're getting some of the same answers. Everyone has the right idea.
Well, you have all noticed all of the exact things that I wanted to talk about. So good observing. When we look at poetry, it looks different than a story. The lines are shorter. There is usually a title. There is lots of white space. And you also notice that when you write a poem, you're not writing across the whole page. Somebody noticed that the poem is in the middle of the page. And that's what poetry looks like. You also sometimes get these groups, which in writing, if you are a little in grade 3 or 4 or 5, you know the word paragraph when we divide. But in a poem, we call those stanzas. So there's often little stanzas with white space. But excellent job noticing what a poem looks like. The next question that, sorry. So a poet is, so what does a poem look like? It's written by a poet. It has a title, it has more white spaces. And I always like to say that poets leave white spaces to make room for our thinking. So all that white space gives us lots of space for thinking. And it usually has shorter lines than stories and sometimes divided into stanzas. So if you're looking at your chart, teachers, you can start adding some of those ideas into that first box. The next question I want to ask is, what does poetry sound like? The best way to kind of answer this question is to actually read you a poem. So I'm going to read a poem in a moment, And I want you to pay attention to the sound of the poem. This poem is called Things by Eloise Greenfield. Went to the corner, walked to the store, bought me some candy, ain't got it no more, ain't got it no more. Went to the beach, played on the shore, built me a sandhouse, ain't got it no more, ain't got it no more. Went to the kitchen, lay down on the floor, wrote me a poem, still got it, still got it. Now, I want you to take a moment to think about, what did that poem sound like to you? Did you notice anything that was interesting about the sound of that poem? I'm going to stop for a few seconds. You can share with your teacher, what did you notice about the sound of that poem?
All right, so as you are sharing with your teacher, I'm going to read off some of the ones that are already in the chat. So there is rhythm and rhyming. It sounds a bit like a song. It goes fast. There's repeating. There's rhymes, songs, repeating. It sounds like a song. There's repetition. I see a pattern here.
Lots of you are doing such a great job of noticing. So I'm going to give you a little clue about when I talk about what does a poem sound like. I call it the 3 R's. The 3 R's of poetry, and many of you have already told what those 3 R's are. If you are writing or reading a poem, you'll notice that there's 3 things: rhyme, repetition, and rhythm. They all start with the letter R. That's how I remember the 3 R's of poetry: rhyme, repetition, and rhythm. Now, what's important to notice is not all poems have all 3 R's. In order for something to be actually a poem, it needs to have at least one of these 3 R's. But some poems have all 3. This poem happens to have all 3 R's. It has rhyme, repetition, and rhythm. So let's talk about rhyming. You might have noticed that this poem has some rhyming words: store, more, shore, and floor. So those words all have the same sound, so those are rhyming words. You might have also noticed there was repetition: ain't got it no more, ain't got it no more, still got it, still got it. So there's our repetition. And then some of you notice this idea of rhythm or beat. And sometimes when we read a poem, it kind of has that, someone mentioned that, a little bit, it sounds a bit like a song. There's just no music playing. So that's what we call the rhythm of a poem. So a poem has the 3 R's: rhyme, repetition, and rhythm. But remember, you don't need all 3 in order to have a poem. I would love for all of us, can you imagine? There's lots of kids out there. I would love all of us to read this poem together, just to celebrate and notice the rhyme, repetition, and rhythm. Now, if you feel like you want to kind of snap or clap as you're going, please, I'm inviting you to kind of feel that rhythm. Okay, so let's start. Things by Eloise Greenfield. Went to the corner, walked to the store, bought me some candy, ain't got it no more, ain't got it no more. Went to the beach, played on the shore, built me a sandhouse, ain't got it no more, ain't got it no more. Went to the kitchen, lay down on the floor, wrote me a poem, still got it, still got it. Great job, everyone. I hope you kind of really felt those 3 R's. So on your chart, if your teacher is creating a little 4 chart, they can maybe write the 3 R's of poetry there. The next question I want to ask is, what does poetry make us feel? How does poetry make us feel? Poems give us feelings. Sometimes those feelings leave us with that, after we finish reading the poem, that feeling stays with us. So if we think about our poem, how does this poem make you feel? What feeling do you get when you read this poem? You can tell your teacher, what feelings did you get when you listen to this poem. And poems can give us different feelings. We can have more than one feeling when we read a poem. What are feelings that you're getting, Haley?
All right. So happy, calm makes me feel happy, makes me feel confused, calm, happy, like I want to dance, happy and excited, lively, curious, surprised.
Those are such great feeling words. I'm going to tell you the first feeling that I have sometimes when I read this poem is disappointment, because I go to the candy store and then my candy's gone. And then I build a sand house and then my sand castle is gone. So there's that disappointment. But then all of a sudden it's like, but if I write a poem, it lasts forever. So then I feel excited. And I also feel like it makes me want to write a poem. That's what this poem does for me. It kind of gives me that excited feeling like poems last. So great job, everyone. Our last question. So poems give us all sorts of feelings. Poems can make us feel happy. There's sometimes poems that can make us laugh. Some poems are sad, but poems always give us a feeling that stays with us. And the last thing I want to talk about is, what do poems make us think about? Every poem has a meaning. And so what is the meaning of this poem? When I think about the poem that we just have been talking about, Eloise Greenfield, the poet, what she really wanted us to know is, if you write a poem, it lasts forever. Some things don't last. Candy doesn't last. Sandcastles don't last, but poems last. But she didn't use those words. She told us something in a new way. And that's what poetry really is. It's looking at the world with poets' eyes and thinking about things in a new way. So very quickly, I'm going to show you two examples of poems. One poem says something in a new way and the other one doesn't. And I want you to think about which one. So here's both poems are about a dog. So this poem's called My Dog. My dog is cute, my dog is fun, I love my dog. Now, if we look at this poem, it looks like a poem. Does it have rhyme? No, but it's got repetition. It's got a little rhythm. But does it say something in a new way? Not really. The poet is just saying, my dog is cute, my dog is fun, I love my dog. So the poet is telling us that they love their dog. Now I'm going to read the second poem. And this is also called My Dog. My dog Poppy, best dog Poppy. His tail tickles my legs. His feet smell like wood chips. Best friend Poppy. Now this poet didn't actually say, I love my dog, but I got the feeling of the poet loves the dog. And I also loved that he said it, or she said it, in a new way. His tail tickles my legs. His feet smell like wood chips. And that's what poets do. They use their poet's eyes and they tell us something old in a new way. So that is the end of my last question. So now hopefully some of you have got a little bit more understanding of what is poetry. Poetry looks like a poem. It sounds like a poem. It gives us a feeling, and it's always looking at the world in a new way. So Haley, I think it's probably time for our little body break. So am I gonna, sorry, Haley, do you want me to stop sharing? Okay, there we go.
Excellent. So all right. So if you have been to one of our events before, you know that we take a moment in the middle to pause and move our bodies so that our brains are ready to go again afterwards, because it's hard to sit for a really long time. So today we are doing Would You Rather, because I find that this is fun and it works. And I like coming up with questions. So how we are going to do this right now, you're sitting and you're listening to the instructions. And then when the instructions are done, I will tell you to stand up. So how this works is we have to have an agreement that if we're going to do a brain break, when we are done the brain break, you need to agree to sit down, take a deep breath, and be ready to start again. All right. Can you give me a thumbs up if that's something you can agree to? Awesome. I love it. So in a moment, I'm going to ask you to stand up and I'm going to say 2 questions. Most likely you've done would you rather questions before, but if you answer one, you're going to do 5 jumping jacks. If you answer the other, you're going to do 5 toe touches. All right. So here we go. Could you please stand up? Now make sure when you stretch out your arms, you're not going to smack anyone beside you because they might not think that's as fun as you think it is. All right. So I'll wait till you're ready to listen. Excellent. All right. The first one, since we're coming up on Earth Day, we kind of have an Earth Day one here. Would you rather explore a rainforest? So this is for toe touches. Would you rather explore a rainforest, or for 5 jumping jacks, would you rather explore a desert? So 2 very different ecosystems. So toe touches is for a rainforest. Jumping jacks is for a desert. So lock in your answers. All right. Got your answer, everyone? And then I'm going to count to 5. And as I count to 5, you're going to do the thing 5 times. Ready? Here we go. 1. Let's see your answers. 2. Let's see your jumping jacks or toe touches. 3, 4, and 5. Awesome. Freeze. Awesome. All right. So I'm going to read another one. I'm going to tell you to lock in your answers. And then as I'm counting to 5, you're going to do the thing those 5 times. All right. So the next one. Would you rather the weather, this is for toe touches, would you rather the weather be super hot or super cold? This past year in British Columbia, or in the Lower Mainland anyhow, we had a heat dome that made the weather super duper hot, like incredibly hot. And we also had a polar vortex, which made the weather super cold. So we kind of had both of those. So if you had to choose one thing to be all the time, here's the trick. If it was all the time, going to be super hot or super cold. All right. So lock in your answer. Toe touches for super hot. Jumping jacks for super cold. All right. Lock in your answer. And here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Awesome. And freeze. All right. This very last one. This isn't Earth Day, but I like it. Would you rather, are we listening? Perfect. Would you rather only, this is for toe touches, only be able to speak in rhyme? So every sentence that comes out of your mouth needs to rhyme, or only be able to sing the things you want to say. All right. So rhyming is toe touches. Singing is jumping jacks. Lock in your answer. And here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Awesome. That's all 3. Could you guys have a seat, please? Have a seat. All right. So before we go back for the next lesson, I just want to remind everyone that our next lesson is going to be a writing lesson where Adrienne is going to teach us how to write a poem. This part of the lesson, you may find it is more helpful to pop over to the live stream where you can pause and restart, because it's impossible for us to give everyone enough time to write, because we have people in kindergarten all the way up to grade 7, and probably some older ones as well. So if at any point we're going too fast, you can head over to the live stream and finish up over there. So this is where we're going to do lesson 2. And yeah, so I am going to hand it back over to Adrienne, and Adrienne is going to teach us all about writing a poem.
Okay, that was a great body break. I love that game, that would you rather. I do, it's fantastic. So now when we've learned, after we've just kind of got a sense of what poetry is, and we've learned about the 3 R's, I am going to now, we're going to try to write our own poem. Now, one of the things that I always like to do when I'm writing poems is I read a lot of poetry. And sometimes when I read poetry, it inspires me to write my own poems, kind of like the poem that I just read. Poetry often gives me ideas. And so I was looking through some poetry books, and one of my favorite poets wrote something called a gratitude poem. Now, a gratitude poem is like a thank you poem. So I'll tell you the name of the poet that I really, one of them that I really liked. Her name is Amy Ludwig van der Water. And one of the things I really like about her poetry is she uses her poet's eyes, and she looks at things in a new way. And when she writes those poems, always to me, she says something old in a new way. So in her book, Read, which is a poetry book, I noticed one of her poems was all about thank yous. And the one that really caught my eye was she was saying thank you to her socks. Dear crazy socks, thank you for not caring if you match or not. You hug my feet and make my mouth smile. And then she wrote a thank you note to a butterfly and a thank you note to the man at the deli. And I all of a sudden started thinking, what a great idea to write a poem as a thank you note. Then I did a little bit more searching, and I found another poem by Amy Ludwig van der Water, and she wrote a thank you poem to her socks. So I'm going to read this poem to you, and then we're going to just have a few questions and talk about it. Dear socks, I love you. My toes love you. My heels love you. My eyes love you. And your big pink roses. On this winter morning, as snowfall swirls to storm, you are blooming on my ankles. You are keeping my feet warm, so I'm thankful. You are socks of my dreams. My words are overdue. Will you be my Valentine? I am in love with you. Love me. Now, when I first read this poem, I was kind of giggling a little bit. I don't know if some of you are kind of laughing. Why is this funny? Why does this seem funny? Well, we normally don't say thank you to socks. Normally, when we say thank you, we're talking to people. We might say thank you to a friend, thank you to someone who shares something with us. But how often do we say thank you to our socks, or thank you to our pencil, or thank you to our pillow? But this gave me a great idea. I thought, I want to write a poem where I'm saying thank you to something that I normally don't thank. What Amy Ludwig van der Water does is she's looking at the world with her poet's eyes, and she's thinking about a way to say thank you. We don't normally say that. Now, if we look at this poem, what I notice about it when I think about the 3 R's is that it doesn't rhyme. But does that matter? No, because remember, when we are thinking about poetry, it has to have one of the 3 R's. And what I notice about this poem is it has repetition. It certainly looks like a poem because the lines are shorter and it's got some repetition. My toes love you, my heels love you, my eyes love you. So there is some repetition, but mostly what I like about this poem is it's got some really interesting meaning. She is looking at socks in a new way. So I got excited reading this poem, and I thought, that's what we're going to do in our poetry workshop. We're going to write gratitude poems. So I would love for you to join me in starting our gratitude poem. If you have a pencil and a piece of paper in front of you, that is fantastic. The first step of writing a gratitude poem or a thank you poem is writing a list of objects that you really love. So I just wanted to share mine with you. I love books. I love my pillow. I love coffee. I love the forest. I love grilled cheese sandwiches. I love campfires, my dog, and I love snow. So I made my list. I'm going to pause for a moment, and I'd like you to start writing a list of objects that you love. We are not including people on our list because I love my children, I love my sister, I love my mom and dad, but I'm not putting people on my list. I'm just putting objects. Okay, I'm going to pause for a moment, give you a few seconds to get started.
And then do you want some of them to write their stuff in the chat as well?
I would love for teachers to share some of the things that their students are writing on their list. Absolutely.
Awesome. So we'll just stop talking for a sec so they can think.
Yeah. Maybe you just want to do a class brainstorm. That would work too.
All right, they're starting to come in. Here we go. All right.
Okay, good. I can't wait.
Okay. I'm going to try and read as fast as they're coming. My bike, clothes, imaginary friend, cow pillow, my dog, coffee, soccer ball, duvet, books, shoes, cat, candy, cereal, trees, TV, candy, cat, blankets, video games, backpack, computer, chair, spaghetti. Oh man, there's so many. Do you want me to keep
so
reading?
many. Haley, there's so many, you probably can't even read them all. But I wanted to point out one that I kind of noticed. Someone said, I love my cow pillow. And I really like that. That is a very specific thing. It's not just because on my list, I said pillow, but just to say cow pillow, or if you have a stuffy, like my stuffy dog or my stuffy cow or something. So it was very personal. So I really liked that. But wow, what a great list. Okay, so that's step one. Step two is once you have your list, you're going to look over your list and choose one. You're going to choose the one that you would like to actually say thank you to. And what we have to imagine is that that object has feelings, and we want to thank the object for all that they give to us. So I looked over my list and I picked grilled cheese sandwiches because I love grilled cheese sandwiches. So I wanted to write a thank you to my grilled cheese sandwich poem. So here's how you're going to think about getting ready to write your poem. Before you start writing your poem, I want you to think about what are some things that you really like about that object? How does it make you feel? So in your teacher package that your teacher has, there is a little planning page. You are not going to possibly be able to do the plan right now because of the time that we have together. But when you finish this little session with me, this is something that you can work on. What are the things that you love about your object? So I'm going to show you what I put for my grilled cheese sandwich. What do I love about grilled cheese sandwiches? So I love the stretchy cheese. You know, when you break open the grilled cheese sandwich and the cheese stretches if it's really hot. I love your crispy edges, those crunchy corners. I love your triangle shape. Now notice that it's like I'm talking to the grilled cheese sandwich. I'm getting into I'm using my poet's eyes and I'm looking at the grilled cheese sandwich as if it was a person. I love your stretchy cheese. I love your crispy corners. I love your triangle shape. The next part of my plan is I want to actually say thank you to the grilled cheese sandwich. What do I want to thank my grilled cheese sandwich? Thank you for being so delicious. Thank you for filling my tummy with cheesy, wheezy happiness. I like to kind of make up words. Thank you for keeping me company on rainy days. So I'm going to pause for a moment. I would love for you to just think about maybe on your list circle the one that you think you might want to write your gratitude poem about. Choose one from your list. And then maybe your teacher can choose one as a class example. And you can brainstorm for a few seconds. What are some things that you love about that object? And what are you grateful for? So I'll pause for a moment, Haley, if there's anything that comes through the chat. Otherwise, people can just work on their own paper. We'll just take another minute for people to maybe use it, do a little bit of writing.
Absolutely. So if you have things to add to the chat, in a moment, I will read a few of those out.
So think about, what do you love about that? And what would you say thank you? If that object was alive, what would you say thank you for?
Someone from Clove Cliff Elementary just said that they love their nose.
What a great thank you, nose. What a great idea. Because what does your nose, thank you for helping me breathe. Thank you for letting me smell the beautiful flowers in the springtime. What a perfect topic for a poem. I'd never thought of your like eyes or ears or hands. That would be a great one to do.
Someone else said homemade bread, which made me make a connection between that and the nose one, because the smell of homemade bread is just amazing.
And thank you, homemade bread, for smelling so good and for helping me make sandwiches. Oh, homemade bread, love it, love it.
Oh, and my refrigerator for keeping my food from going bad.
That's a good one. That's a great one for keeping all the goodies cold. Excellent. Okay, what I'm going to show you now is one of the things that I've done is I've already written my gratitude poem because I wanted to show you step 3. So step 1 is actually it's step 4. Step 1 is brainstorm your list. Step 2 is choose your poem topic. Step 3 is do a little brainstorming, things that you love and things that you want to say thank you for. And then step 4 is writing. So I've already done my poem and I'm going to read it to you. And then we're going to talk about it. Just before I started to write, though, I did go back to Amy's poem. I wanted to revisit this poem and I wanted to remind myself about some of the things that she used when she was writing. That's what I always like to, I'm not copying her poem, but because she's such a good poet, I like to kind of borrow. And what I loved in the way that she started her poem, she said, I love you, my toes love you, my heels love you, my eyes love you. And I really liked that because it had some repetition and it was a great beginning to the poem. So when I was writing my grilled cheese sandwich poem, I was thinking, I'd like to borrow that from Amy's poem and kind of incorporate it into my poem. I also really loved how she ended her poem. I am in love with you. Love me. And if you notice how she started her poem, she wrote, it's almost like she's writing a letter, Dear Socks. So those are some of the things that I thought, I'm going to use those when I write my poem. So here's my poem, Dear Grilled Cheese Sandwich. Are you ready? I love you, grilled cheese sandwich. I love you. My eyes love you. My mouth loves you. My tummy loves you. I love your crunchy edges and soft middle. I love the way you stretch yourself like cheesy elastic, showing off to the tuna and egg sandwiches. I'm so grateful that you're my friend on rainy Saturday afternoons. You fill my small hole of hunger with cheesy, wheezy happiness. I love you, grilled cheese sandwich, now and forever. Love me. So there's my grilled cheese sandwich poem. Now you'll notice that there's some similarities between my poem and Amy's poem, but because I was writing something different, it's a different kind of poem, but I still started with dear and I still ended with love. My poem does not rhyme. It doesn't need to rhyme because remember, you just need one of the 3 R's, and I included repetition. Repetition is one of the easiest things to do when you're writing a poem, but my poem looks like a poem because I've got some lines that are quite short and there's a lot of white space. So here are some tips when you go to write your gratitude poems. A few little tips to remember. You're going to start your poem with dear and then whatever it is. You're going to pretend, you're going to use your poet's eyes and pretend that the object you're writing about has feelings and can hear you. You're going to try to use some repetition, and you're going to definitely include thank you and I love you if you can. And then you're going to end your poem with love me. So those are a few tips. And what I want to just end our section with is I'm going to share a few poems that have been written, gratitude poems that have been written by some students. These are students that were in grade 1 and 2. And I just love to share them with you because they did the lesson on gratitude poems and they did such a good job of their poetry. So I'm going to start with, these are gratitude poems from Mrs. Lebrecht's grade 1-2 class from Glendale School. So I'm going to read the first one. Dear Spaghetti, you are so long and you can wrap around my fork and the meatballs are so squishy. You are delicious. Yours truly. And then we covered the student's name. This one really makes me laugh. Dear pajamas, my pajamas, you are so soft. I can't believe it. I miss you so much when you were at school. Love, and then the person's name we just hid. So this is gratitude poetry. I am so excited to be able to share this idea with you, but also to be able to read some of your poems. So we are going to take a short pause now. Now is the time that it's likely going to be close to recess, close to the end of the session, but Haley is going to talk about how we're going to take this idea of gratitude poems and work it into Earth Day. So that's going to be the second part of the lesson. Yes. But right now, she's just going to give us a little bit of instruction. Oh, I'm going to stop sharing. Yep. Sorry.
All right. So so in the chat, I can see so many cool like lines and phrases of things that you have said so far about your poem.
Can you share a couple of them with me?
Thank you for being big and keeping me warm. Thank you for holding my water. Thank you for not spilling. I'm not sure what we're talking about because they're all mixed together, but I would love to see your poems and I would love it if you could share your poems with us. And we have actually, so you can just send us any poems just because, and we like reading them, but you actually have an opportunity to enter our Earth Day poetry contest. So after you head out, we're going to keep recording a little bit, another lesson about writing Earth Day poems, but you have the opportunity to submit your poem to Simbi for the possibility of having it on the Simbi platform. So remember how I said that Simbi is, that this presentation is brought to you by Simbi. So we have, so here on Simbi, you can read Adrienne's poem. So this is a brand new poem on Simbi that we just put up last night. So you could go on there and you can read it. And here's the cool thing about Simbi is you can go on a reading journey. And as you're on your journey, you select different poems and you can either narrate a poem or read along to a poem, or you can silent read. And if you click on narrate, then you'll have the option to find a poem or to choose a narrator. And on Adrienne's poem, you'll have the option to choose Adrienne to read it, and then you can listen to her read it. Now, because it's a new poem, there's not very many people who have recorded it. So I want to challenge your teachers to go on and narrate the poem as well. But also on Simbi, there are so many other really neat poems that you can listen to other people say as well. So there's so many cool poems in the library. And one of the things that I think is interesting, especially with the poetry, is that you can listen to different people read the same poem and kind of hear how they use it differently, how they narrate it differently, and maybe there's a different rhythm or a different flow to it. So that's really cool. But you have the opportunity to submit your poem. It doesn't have to be a gratitude poem. It could be any poem, as long as it has to do with Earth Day and nature. It could be a gratitude poem to the earth or to a rock or anything, or it could just be a different type of poem if you're writing poems in your class. So you can find more information about that on the website. But we are going to pause here. This is our wrap up bit here. We're going to pause because most likely most of you need to head out for recess or lunch, or you're just done sitting. And so I'm going to invite you to take a break at this point, and we are going to move into our bonus section on taking your gratitude poems and turning them into Earth Day poems. So if you want to stick around, you absolutely can. But I know that most of you probably need to finish writing your first gratitude poem first before you start looking at your Earth Day poems. All right. So I want to say thank you for joining us, and you can head out. I'm going to play another countdown timer screen so that you can head out, and then we are going to get started again. All right, my friends, thank you for joining us. So I am going to get started. So we are now on part 3. If you're still with us in the live, welcome. I'm so glad you're still here. We're not offended if you head out, but it's awesome that you are here. So we are on part 3 of our bonus lesson, moving on to Earth Day poems. So Adrienne, I'm going to pass it right over to you and you can get started.
Thank you so much, Haley. I'm glad that there were people that decided to stay. We are going to talk about now, after you have had a chance to practice your gratitude poetry with the topics that we brainstormed earlier. So many amazing ideas. Thank you, fridge. Thank you, cow pillow. Thank you, video game. Thank you, nose. All those amazing ideas. I really, really encourage you to practice your gratitude poems with those topics before you switch over to the Earth Day poems. But we were talking about the fact that April is a very important month because it is Poetry Month, but it's also Earth Day. And I was thinking, what a great opportunity to put together our gratitude poems with Earth Day. So we're going to go through exactly the same process that we did when we were brainstorming and writing our original gratitude poems, but this time we are specifically going to focus on things in nature that we are grateful for. So we're going to almost write a gratitude poem to Earth. And this is our way of saying thank you to the earth for giving us all the amazing things that we have every day in our lives. So exactly the same steps. Step number 1, you're going to brainstorm, but this time, rather than brainstorming just any object, I would like you to think about objects in nature that you are grateful for. So for example, here's my list: snow, stars, trees, the ocean, seashells, forest, flowers, moss, puddles. You can list very tiny things like a blade of grass or a teeny tiny clover. You can list very big things like the ocean or mountains. But the idea is you want to think about, if you could say thank you to something in the earth, what would you want to say thank you to? What's something very special to you? So step one, brainstorm. Step two, choose the one object that you would like to have for your poem. So I chose seashells. I chose seashells because when I'm going to the beach, one of the things that I like to look for are the little tiny seashells. And sometimes I find the broken ones, but I get very excited when I find a shell that's completely intact. So I have a little collection of teeny tiny seashells. So then you're going, yes.
Would you like to hear some of the things that are in the chat of nature things that people are asking? So you can add them into the chat if you haven't already.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Okay. So you already said blade of grass, rocks, pebbles, the creek, mountains, and hummingbirds, eagles, the wind.
Oh, I love that one.
Stars. Oh my goodness, there's so many. I'm so looking forward to reading some of these. I really hope that even if you're not entering the contest, that you'll share them with us. The moon. Oh my. We have
so good.
And someone's wondering, can they do things like horses or animals?
Yes, you can do horses or animals. I think it's totally fine to do horses and animals. I think for Earth Day, I was thinking about things that come from the earth, but animals, absolutely, that's part of nature, and that's part, really, there's no rules.
Ooh, I like these ones. Rain or waves or mud.
Or rainbow. A rainbow would be
rainbow.
great.
Absolutely. The after the rain is the smell after the rain. That's another good one.
Ooh, I love that.
All right. There's some good ones. You can keep adding them to the chat if you want, but we're going to let Adrienne continue.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing those. So we brainstorm nature, we choose one that we want to have for our gratitude poem, and then we really think about, if that object could hear us, what would I want to say to it? Remember, poets look at the world with their poet's eyes, and they say something old in a new way. I never say thank you to the shells that I collect, but now is my chance to say thank you. So I will take my seashells as my topic. Then I'm going to write things I love about seashells and things that I'm thankful for. This was a time where I was just going to invite some of you. What are things that you, even if you don't love seashells, what would be things that you would say to a seashell? If you could say thank you, what are some things that you like about the seashell? So I'm going to pause and invite you. What do you like about the seashell?
The beauty in their design.
Looking
great. Pretty. For telling me what the ocean sounds like.
So beautiful. So good. I love that one.
The shiny, the shape, the memories.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. Nature is just so amazing. And just when you look at a seashell and you see the pattern on the outside of the shell, just those little ridges, that's just made by nature, it's really quite amazing. So it gives us, these gratitude poems give us an opportunity to really think and look and be very, very mindful of just the beauty of Earth and all the things that the Earth is giving us. So I'm going to read my poem to you. I tried to follow the same kind of pattern that I did with my grilled cheese sandwich poem, but this poem is about the seashell. So here I go. Dear seashell, I love you, seashell. I love you. I love your crunchy white outside and your smooth pink inside. I love holding you in my hand You are so pretty. You smell like the ocean. Thank you for being my tiny treasure. I love you, seashell. I love you. Love me. So there is my Earth Day gratitude poem, my thank you poem to the seashells. And I am so excited to welcome and invite all of you to finish your first gratitude poem, but then maybe next week or closer to Earth Day, you can start thinking about writing a gratitude poem for the earth. And now Haley is going to, I'm going to take back the charge, and she's going to really talk about how can you enter into our Earth Day gratitude poem contest. It is for everyone who has participated in this workshop. We would love to read your poems. And so Haley's just going to talk about how to do that. Haley, do you want me to get the screen off?
Or yeah, if you could, that would be great.
Okay.
If you stop sharing. So like Adrienne said, we have the poetry contest coming up. So you have until Earth Day itself to get your poems into us. And then the following Thursday, April 28th, is Poem in Your Pocket Day. And on that day, Adrienne will be announcing the winners for our poetry contest. And for the poetry contest, you have the opportunity to get your poems up on Simbi. So you can actually read the Dear Seashell one on Simbi as well. That's Adrienne's poem as well. But you have the opportunity to have your poem read by thousands of kids all around the world. And you'll be able to hear other kids put their voices to your poem. Isn't that cool? I love being able to write to for a real audience. So that is our poetry contest. So you can sign up for that. And you can do that at simbi.io/poetry-contest. And you'll get all the details there. But it doesn't just have to be a gratitude poem. It can be any nature poem. But we also want to then invite you back for our Earth Day poetry author visit with Joyce Sidman. So it's actually not on Earth Day, it's the day before, but we can pretend, right? So she is going to read to us from her book, Hello Earth, which is a poem or it's poems to our planet. So she's going to read to us from that, and that may give you some even more ideas as you are working on your poem. So I hope you will come back and join us for that, and that you will enter the poetry contest, and that you will take some time to read Adrienne's poems on Simbi, as well as some of the other poets and authors that we have on there. So we are just going to wrap up, and I want to say thank you to everyone who has stuck around the whole time, and those who came back through the recording. Thanks for coming back. And we look forward to seeing you again soon. Adrienne, do you have one last thing you want to say before we head out today?
I just wanted to thank everyone for joining us today. I so enjoyed teaching you about a little bit about poetry. I hope you feel a little bit more knowledgeable about how to write a poem and excited to try your gratitude poem and gratitude poem for Earth Day. And I would love anyone in the chat who's still there. What is the thing that you learned or liked most from this morning's session? Just share in the chat. What was something that you learned about poetry or that you really liked about poetry? And thanks, everyone. Big shout out to lots of people I know, Mrs. McGarry and Mrs. Woolrich's class, Mrs. Wu's class, Mrs. Forbes, Mrs. Leah Corris's class, all my friends in Vancouver. Thank you for coming.
Awesome. So some of the things in here in the chat was just things like that poems have so many different forms and that they don't have to rhyme. Someone's really excited about learning about the Earth Day Poetry Contest. The 3 R's, that to write a poem, you don't need to rhyme. All these things, oh my goodness. And poems help you visualize and they help you see with your poet's eyes. So many amazing things that you guys have learned through our workshop today. So thank you again so much for joining us, and we hope to see you again soon. All right, goodbye everyone. Have a great day. All right, bye.